Hey, Olivia from Ollie here to help you ease into all things back to school. Homework, meal prep, and pickup duty piling up? Goodbye Stress Gummies help you keep your cool. Start the day with Kids Multi and Probiotic for digestive and immune system health. They'll love to take them, and that makes mornings easier. When back to school gets real, Ollie helps you deal. Find these and more at ollie.com or retailers nationwide. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
This is Joe Budden. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. So I'm here to make sure you don't miss any of the action this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. With millions of members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks is the best place to put your takes to the test. Plus, the app is really simple to use and available in 40-plus states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Just pick 2 or more players across any sport. Pick more or less on their projections, and if you're right, you could cash in. With simple stats and fan-friendly policies, PrizePicks is the best place to make your picks. Most importantly, they don't play about your paper. All transactions on the app are fast, safe, and secure.
Download the PrizePicks app today and use code SPOTIFY to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code SPOTIFY to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
The Red Apple Media Podcast Network presents This is Protecting America. Now, here's Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby.
And welcome to another edition of Protecting America. I'm Rita Cosby. So far during President Trump's second term, about 200,000 people have been deported. So what is the latest on our southern border? And how tough has it been for law enforcement dealing with increased attacks against them? Well, joining us now to discuss this and so much more is Lieutenant Chris Olivarez. He is a spokesperson with the Texas Department of Public Safety. Chris, it's great to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Rita. Great to be with you and your listeners.
How successful has President Trump been in handling the border and also the deportations?
Well, I think first we have to look back, what we experienced the last 4 years under the previous administration. And you and I have talked numerous times, and you've talked to other law enforcement officials on the border, Border Patrol agents. And, you look back those 4 years and just think about the unprecedented surge of illegal immigration that we were experiencing, especially in Texas. I mean, we were at the forefront. That's where everything was happening. Eagle Pass, Texas, Del Rio, the Rio Grande Valley, just the constant surge of illegal immigration, tens of thousands of illegal immigrants that were coming across the border, unimpeded, no consequences, and pretty much placing agents, in a situation where all they could do was just, catch and release. And that's what we were dealing with the last 4 years. And, of course, on top of that, you had the cartels that were just, emboldened by the fact that the lack of consequences from the previous administration. And those are facts. I mean, the cartels made, billions of dollars off of human smuggling. It was a multi-billion-dollar criminal network for these cartels because every single person that came across that border, a child, an adult, whoever, didn't matter who it was, they were paying a fee to those cartels to get across that border. So it really incentivized the cartels even more, made them more powerful on top of the drugs and fentanyl that they continue to smuggle across the border. So there was just so many different things that we were dealing with as Texas officials on the border the last 4 years. And now we fast forward, what we're seeing now, and it was quite remarkable to see from one day to the next. And what I mean by that is, the day of inauguration, from the following day, we saw a significant decrease of illegal border crossings at the border. We know that the last year in 2024, going into 2025, illegal border crossings had dropped under the previous administration, but we were still dealing with anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 a day illegal border crossings across the entire southwest border. And now with the new administration, under the Trump administration, from one day to the next, the day after inauguration, those numbers dropped even more to where we were dealing with, anywhere between 200 to 300 illegal border crossings. That's across the entire southwest border. So a significant drop in illegal immigration. And of course, we always said, we didn't need any new policies or laws. I mean, all we needed was leadership, no matter who it was. But we're seeing it now with this new administration that the leadership that they have in office all the different officials, top officials. We're seeing more consequences now at the border, and that has really transpired and carried over to the decrease in the number of people coming across that border illegally.
Many people are also self-deporting, too. I mean, are you seeing that, too, that a lot of people are saying, oh, no, these people mean business, and now sort of you guys are able to do your job. You don't feel hamstrung. Do you believe also that a lot of people are taking advantage of sort of the self-deporting just because they see the warning signs? Not only are people getting deported, but on their own, they're saying, okay, I don't want to get swept up in a roundup. I don't want to, whatever the case is. And they're taking advantage of sort of the CBP home app and other things.
Oh, of course. I mean, even the previous administration, when they had the CBP One app, we know that was more for enticing or inviting illegal immigrants. That was one way to kind of disguise the fact that they were still allowing illegal immigration across the border and releasing illegal immigrants into the country. But now we're seeing it different now with this new administration. We're seeing it different as far as how they're using that CBP One or CBP Home to really get illegal immigrants that have been released into the country to self-deport, because there is consequences behind that. And there is, truthfully there is. I mean, those are the laws. I mean, if you are in the country illegally, no matter what your background is, the fact is if you cross the border illegally, that is against the law. So I think many illegal immigrants that are seeing what's happening right now, they know that this administration, they are actually applying consequences. They will find you if you are in the country legally, and you will get deported. And if they have to go find you, there's going to be stiffer penalties and consequences for that. So I think that has really kind of carried over to this CBP One Home, where you do have illegal immigrants that are self-deporting because of that, because of the fear of, well, if I get caught, there's going to be stiffer consequences and penalties for me. So I'd rather just turn myself in or self-deport. So I think that's been very beneficial as well, and it does alleviate the strain from Border Patrol agents having to constantly process, as well as for us, on the border, not having to deal with these large groups that were coming across the border illegally. We can focus more now on the criminal threats, human smuggling, those that are trying to sneak in and evade capture. But it does help a lot having those different tools in place to actually get more people in the country that are here illegally to self-deport.
You brought up Eagle Pass and where you guys are. You really are sort of at the epicenter. Talk about some of the things that were going on in the past 4 years in terms of, I remember some of the images coming out of Eagle Pass. I mean, it was like a football field group of people coming through all the time, it seemed.
It was. Rita, we look back and, that's, one thing that, we can always compare the last 4 years and what we're seeing now. And you see just a very stark contrast of, what actually took place the last 4 years and what we're seeing now. And as you mentioned, Eagle Pass, Texas was the epicenter for illegal immigration. We were dealing with, anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 illegal crossings a day, just in that one small area. It's a small town, 30,000, 40,000, population. And we were dealing with anywhere, like I said, between 5,000 to 6,000 a day of illegal border crossings, on top of the human smuggling, the high-speed chases, all the criminal activity that was taking place in that small border town. So it really does, really, I guess, kind of, put in perspective of how bad the situation was those last 4 years and where we're at right now, just a complete difference. And again, it goes back to just having leadership in place that actually allows agents, that actually allows law enforcement officials to do their job and really enforce the laws that currently exist right now. And I think one thing that really stood out to me when this whole situation on the border started, I look back in 2021 when we had the surge in Del Rio with the Haitians. I really thought at that point, that was a breaking point. When you have 17,000 plus Haitians come across that border within a matter of days, I really thought at that point that was going to be the breaking point where that previous administration would actually enforce the laws. And then we look at just all the devastation that took place after that. We saw surge after surge in different parts of the border. Not only that, but also families that have been victimized by criminal legal immigrants that were in the country, the fentanyl surge, so many different things that just really impacted our country, really impacted the lives of Americans. And I think that's never going to be forgotten. So, I always look back at those times and those situations and was very hopeful that there would have been some change at that point. But, I think we know now that there wasn't, and we see now the significant change now in the leaders that we have currently right now, regardless if anybody favors their policies or whatever the case may be. I think we can both agree on that, or we can all agree on, is the fact that there is a significant change at the border. It's a lot safer. It's more secure than it's ever been. And I believe the American people are a lot safer now, knowing that they have federal law enforcement agencies, law enforcement officers out there looking for these criminal illegal immigrants that were released to the country by the previous administration.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Knowing that they're out there looking, and when you see some of the people that are rounded up, we're going to get to that in a moment, too. But Chris, explain to people also, for listening, why Eagle Pass seems to be the epicenter, and it was the epicenter with so many crossings. Is it the geographics of it? Explain sort of why that's the hot spot.
I believe it's the geographic area of it. There's less cartel violence as you compare it to, like El Paso or even the Rio Grande Valley, where there's a heavy cartel presence across the border in Mexico. Eagle Pass is Del Rio. For whatever reason, there is less cartel presence there, less violence compared to the other border cities. So I believe that's the reason why that many of the, caravans that we were seeing, or the surge of illegal immigration, was taking place in those areas because of that, because of the fact that there's less violence, especially for immigrants that are traversing through those Mexican cities and making it to the U.S. It's a lot safer for them. Nonetheless, though, there's cartels that still run those areas. They still operate in those areas, but it's much different compared to the other border cities. So I believe that's why we've always seen a surge there. And even back in 2019, under the first Trump administration, there was a surge at one point in Eagle Pass, Texas, and that lasted for a couple of months. But for whatever reason, I believe that's the reason why we see a surge there, because of the fact that there is less cartel violence. It's a lot easier for people to get across, especially in those areas as well. And the Mexican authorities are not really, less inclined to actually apply consequences or stop people from actually crossing in those areas. So that's why we've seen that to be one of the main areas of illegal crossings taking place in those areas.
And I know you guys just recently had some big arrests. Talk about who you discovered. I think, was it someone from Afghanistan and Pakistan?
Yeah, so we talked about, obviously what we've been dealing with. And, as I mentioned, the numbers are a lot lower. The number of illegal border crossings are lower than they've ever been. But you still have those trying to sneak into the country. The cartels are always going to adapt to policies and changes, and they're going to want to make their money regardless. So they may be more discreet about how they do it. They may smuggle less people than they normally would, but nonetheless, you still have those bad actors, those threats to public safety and national security that are going to try to sneak into the country. An example of that is what happened last week. One of our troopers actually stopped a vehicle. This was in Eagle Pass, Texas, and the driver was actually from out of state. Driver from Jackson, Mississippi, came down to the border to smuggle 3 illegal immigrants, and out of those 3, one was a special interest alien from Afghanistan. And we know that Afghanistan is an adversarial country to the United States with ties to terrorism. But those are the type of individuals that are actually coming across the border. And if it wasn't for our troopers stopping that car, those would have been considered gotaways. And who knows where that special interest alien from Afghanistan would have ended up. And also on top of that, Border Patrol actually apprehended 2 special interest aliens from Pakistan the following day on a private ranch in Eagle Pass, Texas. So we still have those threats that are trying to sneak into the country. But the positive side is that you have more agents now in the field. You have more troopers, more law enforcement working together. So we're able to actually use technology and the resources that we have to apprehend and arrest these type of threats before they make it into the country. But it just does really put in perspective that, yes, numbers are low, but again, we always got to be ahead of the cartels, because the cartels will adapt to whatever changes that we make or any changes that the administration makes. But I think that just really shows that, by being out there, our troopers being out there and stopping these type of threats is making our country much safer because of that.
This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners, meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Honey Bunches of Oats es la forma perfecta de empezar el día con tu familia. Con hojuelas crujientes y miel de verdad que a los niños les encanta. Además, deliciosos trozos de granola, nueces y fruta que todos van a disfrutar. Honey Bunches of Oats es para todos. Toca el banner para saber más.
How much is the cartel entrenched, obviously, still with human smuggling, still with fentanyl, right? I mean, it's still big business for them, just not as big business.
It is. Obviously it was a lot easier the last 4 years because, there really was no, as I mentioned, any consequences. People could come across the border freely just by crossing the river or desert, depending on what part of the border you're at. But the cartels, they would charge to allow people to do that. Right now that there's so much more law enforcement on the border, especially military, state and federal, it's making it much more difficult for the cartels to operate, especially when they want to smuggle people or even drugs. But as I mentioned, they're very discreet about it now. So now they may smuggle maybe 2 or 3 people as opposed to smuggling 50 to 70 people in a truck. So, that's where they get more discreet. They're more careful, a lot more scouting involved. And what I mean by that is you have people on both sides of the border scouting for law enforcement, using drone technology to monitor law enforcement, to get people across, to get those threats across the border. And that's why it's so important to actually have more resources on the border, and especially now with the infrastructure, more border wall that's being constructed, more technology, more cameras, more sensors. All that's going to be very beneficial to the men and women on the line that are working every single day and night to stop these threats. So, again, we want to always stay one step ahead of the cartels because they do adapt to those changes, especially when we talk about drugs. One thing I do want to add is that obviously the 2 main cartels that were operating or really distributing fentanyl were the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation, which is also known as CGNG. Now with the administration really cracking down on these cartels and really having the national spotlight, especially with the terrorist designation, these cartels obviously want to avoid that. So that's why we're starting to see more of an increase of drugs like cocaine and methamphetamine, kind of going back to what they used to smuggle before fentanyl. Because obviously now they want to try to avoid that attention and still get their product across, whether it be cocaine or methamphetamine or illegal immigrants that are trying to get across the border. So, again, that kind of goes back to what I was saying, how the cartels adapt to those changes. So that's one thing that we are seeing across the border, especially where I'm at in South Texas.
How big of an issue still is human smuggling? And obviously, I know that within the country, they are trying to locate big time. At one point, I think it was 200,000 to 300,000 missing kids. I saw the other day, Tom Homan, the border czar with the Trump administration, came out and he said that they've located, I think it was about 23,000, which sounds like a lot of kids. And it certainly is. That's certainly a tremendous effort. But there's still a lot of them that are missing. And how big of a business is that? Is that continuing? And how tough is it to locate that?
Human smuggling, that's one thing that we still deal with on the border, not to the extent that we were dealing with the last 4 years. We still deal with it. Children has always been, obviously probably one of the highest priorities of us, especially in Texas. And I go back to what we did the last 4 years and what we continue to do today is that, we were seeing unaccompanied children coming across our border daily, as well as being smuggled in vehicles. And when we were at the height of this border operation and really going after these criminal smugglers, our state troopers in Texas rescued over 900 children that were being smuggled across that border, whether they were left abandoned or they were being smuggled in a vehicle. And now that you have these reports where you have over 300,000 children that were missing, or not accounted for because of the prior administration, that's very concerning. I think I'd be concerned to anybody that has a child, even if you don't have a child, just to see that innocent life, as young as a 2-year-old that we came across, coming by the border, coming across the border by herself with a piece of paper that has a name and an address, not knowing what that child went through on their journey across the border and where they end up. So that's always been very concerning. That's why it's kind of refreshing to know that we have leaders like Tom Homan that really want to focus on locating these children, trying to reunite them with their family, with their parents, because really no child deserves to be put in this type of situation, no matter what the cost is. But unfortunately, the fact that the border was so just unsecured and there was really no consequences or vetting for these children, especially when we came to sponsors, so many children just got lost in the system. And now we're having to, and I say we because we're also involved as well. We also want to locate children that are in Texas that could have been possibly victimized because of this border situation. So it's good to know that we actually have law enforcement out there, especially with the new administration, really want to make it a priority to locate these children and reunite them with their families. But it's probably one of the most heartbreaking situations on the border, seeing a child coming across that border by themselves and just not knowing where they're going to end up or what their lives are going to be once they're released to a sponsor, or just in this case they get lost in the system.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine, just like you said, a 2-year-old child. I mean, to say, okay, here you go. It's just an unbelievable situation, and what a heartbreaking. That just epitomizes it. Did your jaw drop when you heard it was a 2-year-old?
It did. Actually, we were out there and, we saw this child come across, 2-year-old little girl. I actually posted a video on my social media, on my ex, where it just, and that's one thing that I was doing as being the spokesperson for our agency, was trying to tell the stories of what's really happening on the border, because, obviously Border Patrol at that time couldn't really show anything as far as pictures or video or really what was happening. So my job, obviously what I want the American people to know is actually what's happening, what we're seeing, what we're experiencing, especially when it came to children that were coming across the border by themselves. Because now you're seeing it for yourself. And to see a 2-year-old little girl come across that border in Eagle Pass, Texas, with a piece of paper, with a phone number, and just hearing her talk, saying her age and her name and, where she was coming from, it really hits home. It's probably one of the most, just, heartbreaking situations, even unspeakable, that you can just deal with, even as a law enforcement officer, seeing that every single day happening across the border. And not only that, but those that don't make it, those that end up drowning, in the river because they're trying to get across the border, those are probably one of the just, moments that probably will stick with us for the rest of our lives and not really, just make an impact overall, what we saw and what we experienced in those last 4 years.
Subtle results, still you, but with fewer lines. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
Yeah, I can't even imagine just some of the things that you guys witnessed firsthand. Wow. And yet, in the middle of all this, you guys are doing such tremendous work there at the Texas Department of Public Safety, again, working with ICE, working with Border Patrol. It really is a team effort. You're also dealing with threats. We hear about these attacks that are increasing against agents, law enforcement agents dealing with immigration. How tough has that made the job for agents that are just working so hard, and so many of the members of the Texas Department of Public Safety?
Yeah, Rita, it's been very difficult. I mean, I could tell you that Border Patrol really, they've really just even the last 4 years, I mean, we saw how they were criticized and just, ridiculed by not only their own administration, but even the public in some of these situations. You go back and look, the alleged whipping incident that took place in Del Rio, that turned out to be completely false, and yet they never received an apology for it. And then now you look at, you fast forward now, they're actually out there doing the job that they want to do, trying to locate criminals and apprehend criminals and keep our country safe. And now they're being criticized even by the highest elected officials that they're similar to the Gestapo or just thugs that are out there trying to apprehend criminals. I can't imagine what these agents are going through. I mean, they're trying to do their job. Yes, they have the backing from the administration and their leadership, but now in return they're being criticized by even elected officials, and that's really putting their lives in danger, their families in danger. We experienced an incident here in the Rio Grande Valley, several months ago, where a Border Patrol station was shot at by a person that was trying to attack and actually kill Border Patrol agents arriving to work.
Wow.
And that really shows that the type of environment that we're living in right now, where, these agents, anybody in law enforcement, for that matter, trying to do the job is really not safe, because there is people out there that are radicalized. And it doesn't help when you have elected officials, making these type of comments by saying that they are terrorists or they are the Gestapo thugs that are out there. They're disappearing people. That mindset, really triggers people to do these types of, acts of violence. So it does not help and really, places these agents' lives in danger. But we work with them closely, and I know I can tell you for a fact that we are very, we prioritize working with these agents, working with these federal law enforcement agencies, and we will do our part as well to arrest or to apply the law at the state level to anybody that makes threats to any agent, to any law enforcement official, for that matter, for doing their job. So, but it really does show that we're in a whole different type of environment now, especially with this current border situation, and how it's not going to stop, unfortunately. And we're going to, unfortunately, see probably more acts of this type of threats that are taking place across the country.
Yeah, which is so sad, because I can't imagine already how difficult the job is, and then to add that to it. Well, we are keeping you guys in our thoughts and prayers. You guys are doing yeoman's work, really extraordinary work, and I'm happy to see that it's great teamwork, and it starts obviously all the way from the top too. And everybody, be sure to subscribe and share to this podcast. And thank you so much, Lieutenant Chris Olivarez with the Texas Department of Public Safety. It was so great to have you, and you're right there on the front lines with so many of the great men and women that are doing the job every single day. So it's really great to get your firsthand perspective, and bravo for those recent arrests too as well. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Rita. And all I can do is just tell your listeners and those that are subscribing and listening, please support law enforcement out there on the front lines every single day. They're doing their best to make this country safe.
Absolutely. Well said. And keep up the great work too, Chris.
Thank you.
And everybody, I'll be back soon with another great edition of Protecting America. And of course, you can catch me every weeknight, 10 p.m. to midnight on the legendary WABC Radio. This is Rita Cosby, and thanks for all you do to protect America.